Andy, anyway, we finally got our connection sorted out for TC there. Hey, it's great to see you, TC. Love you, buddy. He just dropped a few chats that he's waiting for us. Anyway, TC, I thought you would enjoy this because something just happened, and I thought I will press record before. Man, holy crap, I gotta close out of this. I was listening to us on YouTube at the same time, and it was that sort of 3 to 4 second delay that makes it impossible for you to actually talk without being self-aware of everything you say. Anyway, Andy, so I was copying down the notes here, and I thought the game that Andy's going to review today sounds like maybe he's going to go on another I Hate Exploding Kittens tirade. And so I copied it into the notes. I thought, this sounds interesting. It sounds like maybe the newest Kickstarter from the Oatmeal, maybe something else from the folks behind Cards Against Humanity. Andy, so apparently this game doesn't exist, and you've taken me for a ride.
Actually, I'm pretty sure that was Trent.
Trent? Oh my goodness! So it wasn't even you, Andy? Trent.
Nope, I didn't put that in.
So Trent, how excited are you for, what was it, staying at your mom's house, the card game? We're gonna be staying at your mom's house. I was like, what? This sounds so trolly, but at the same time, it's to the point now where Trolley sells 8.5 million copies on Kickstarter. It raises $8.5 million.
Yeah.
Can't believe that one went through.
Oh, it did, man. It did. And yeah, I guess maybe I should just say it's been a long day, but it's kind of one of those we're gearing up for a weekend here on a Thursday night, and man, it is things are all running. I mean in the world here at my house, it's a busy Thursday night when I'm doing the game club at the school, but tonight I got a chance to play a couple of games that are really ones I was looking to entertain both people that have never played games before as well as myself, and in many ways they did deliver. I think that board games this year, board games are on the rise. Like in the past, it's always been, if I said we were going to do board games, because I've alternated board games and video games between the different alternating weeks. I don't know if that makes any sense, guys, but I've alternated them, and the board games have just taken off this year. I'm getting more kids playing board games than I am getting kids playing video games, and they're asking me to play more of the board games. It's like, whoa. It's a really, really great feeling, and unfortunately, it requires so much time and attention. A lot of times I'm not even getting a chance to play anything. But I got to play Junk Art, and I got to show Mechs vs. Minions to some kids that have been really looking forward to it. So very, very cool stuff and very successful. They are not going to review those games. I think I've already kind of talked about them. Anyway, yeah. So how are you guys doing?
Good.
That's it. Fine. So Trent, how are things doing? How is the bathroom acoustics?
Seems fine tonight. I can hear this agreement going on elsewhere in the house between my children, probably involving bedtime.
Oh, really? Well, bedtime in your house involves listening to the Trollolololo video, right?
A lot of nights it does, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be pretty controversial. But Google seems to love it.
Yes. Google does quite love the Trollolololo.
The Google Doodle was Trent's favorite of all time. I feel like here in the chat we should almost, Trent, if you could get that link in the chat, because I feel like Trent, you probably have it hotkeyed onto your keyboard where you can just, dump the Trollolololo video into anything at any time, maybe?
Maybe not.
Well, maybe you can slap it into the chat so that way people who are watching can see it. You know what? I hope that Josh keeps this. Actually, I kind of want Josh to do a soft start here. Maybe he'll listen and he'll be like, "Yeah, this is interesting." Anyway, I'll do the official 3, 2, 1. Welcome to The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm your host, Joe Sallen. I'm joined tonight by two wonderful co-hosts. They're beautiful individuals. Their names are
Andrew Dennison,
Trent Ham.
We are going to talk about board games. We're going to be reviewing games first. We are going to then talk about a pretty big question, a question that has challenged me for the last several hours. why. Once we get done with that, if we're still in this plane of existence, we will then hype games on our way out the door. That's what we do here at The Good, the Board, and the Ugly. In addition to that, we have a lot of different ways that we try to that members of the podcast are out there in the gaming community. We're all on Board Game Geek. You can find us there. You can find our guild. Probably the best way to find any of us. Go to that Board Game Geek guild. Search for the Board Game Geek guild. The Good, the Board, and the Ugly. It's guild number 2173. Join that. Become a member. Be one of us. Right now, my big question for you all. This is probably going to end up being a poll that'll get you a free game from Game Surplus mailed to you by me. Anyway, the question right now is, what do we call ourselves? Do we call ourselves the Outlaws, the Eastwoods, the Uglies, the Buglies, what were some of the other ones? I thought, like we're the Renegades, but then at the same time, like that's neither here nor there. It seems like we've got a lot of different really great ideas. We're going to eventually do a poll and settle on whatever you want me to address you all as when I drop episodes. And the like, which I probably should be getting around to doing here. I've actually been neglecting my duties as the host and evangelizer of The Good, the Board, and the Ugly here and dropping a link. Anyway, while I'm getting this link going, I'd like to remind you all that we are sponsored by Game Surplus here at The Good, the Board, and the Ugly. Game Surplus is an online game store where Carmen, the owner of Board Game Surplus, together with Elaine, his wonderful wife, bring you amazing games. Well, they're the games you can get anywhere, but they're going to bring you amazing service. And their prices have been competing more and more with the big names out there. So check them out at gamesurplus.com. And I will tell you guys, if you get on an email to Carmen, he's going to try to track down that game as best he can. He's a real dude, too. So very, very cool. If you're interested in purchasing board games online, if you live out there, you don't have a local friendly game store, or you're just looking to supplement what you can get from your local friendly game store, check them out there, gamesurplus.com. Email Carmen, games@gamesurplus.com. Anyway, guys, we have some games that we may be reviewing. Well, are we actually going to call what we're reviewing games here at this point? I think Trent, would you honestly call what you're going to review here a game?
Yeah, I definitely would.
Would you? Does it deserve its own Board Game Geek entry?
I don't know about that, but I definitely think it's a game.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can get that. I can get that sentiment. So, have I forgotten anything? Because I really want to just actually use this segue, but I also don't want to move on without forgetting anything. Trent, you ready to go here, man? Are we all good? You ready to tell us all about what you're going to be saying?
Yes.
Okay, dude.
Here's the thing. I don't watch football. I have no interest in watching football whatsoever. But I play a lot of fantasy football. For me, fantasy football is the spreadsheet game.
Oh.
That's literally how I play fantasy football. I don't
Sounds
really
like you might be a hustler.
Kinda, yeah. I like the number cards. That's what I enjoy. But what I've come to realize in the last week, because it's obviously the lead up to week 1 of the NFL season, is I've been doing a lot of prep work for all of this and doing several different drafts for like the 5 leagues I'm in and all that, is that it actually has a lot in common with the board game. Like, for example, I'm kind of reminded when we were doing all these opening drafts of a game like Terraforming Mars. The game often opens with a 10-card draft that kind of sets your strategy for the rest of the game. That's what the opening draft in a fantasy football season feels almost exactly like. It's not necessarily the final hand you're going to have at the end of the season, but it sets what you're going to be doing for the rest of the season. It sets where you're strong in some positions and weak in others. And then you've got to figure out, well, how do I turn this so that I'm strong in positions, or at least make up for my weak points, because you're not going to be strong everywhere. You're looking for inefficiencies. A lot of this is about finding inefficiencies. Like, where are other people skipping over players that are otherwise good? Where are the hidden gems? It's whenever you can draft, looking at that, what is the player in front of me taking? What are they going to be taking? And what does that mean I'm going to get? And what does that change about what I'm picking? Exactly the same thing, just like in Seven Wonders, just like in any drafting game. I felt that over and over this week, again and again. I'm like basically playing a board game where we're passing around cards and drafting them. The drafting game of football cards is essentially what I feel like. The season is full of random events, but it's not that random. A good player is going to be a good player unless something kills it, injures it, however you want to put it. There's a lot of trading. There's a lot of watching to see what things are discarded that you might want to pick up. Like if you're playing Rummy, someone might throw away the card that you might need, or you might think has a lot of value in your hand, so you pick it up. And over and over again, the mechanisms of fantasy football are ones that I feel replicate in card games and board games over and over and over. I felt that again and again and again in the last week. And I will say this, several of my leagues are for money. Oh, gasp, I gamble on the internet. Oh, no, come at me. Come at me, FCC.
You are awful. What?
Come at me, FCC. But I honestly feel like my game playing experience in other games is helping me with this. And in essence, is going to, I feel this season, make me a fair amount of money. I feel more confident about this year than I've ever felt about any year in the various leagues I'm in. This is going to be a good year, and I owe a lot of it to my experience as a board gamer and also a bit as a programmer.
Interesting.
Here's the fantasy football, and not watching any football, but watching Excel. That's all I'm going to say.
I feel like you're playing the Moneyball game there.
Kind of, yeah. That's what I do. I'm playing it like it's Moneyball. I could care less about watching an NFL game. I really have no interest. But it's quite fun playing this as like an abstract. We have an attachment.
Like if you don't have any races, any horses in the race, like you don't have any stakes.
Other than a couple players jokingly in my dynasty league, which is where you keep players year over year. And those attachments than anything. So I don't really have anything one or another about players. It's an abstract.
So you're just like they're not names, they're numbers.
Pretty much. There's no theme whatsoever in this for me. I look at everyone else is playing a Ameritrash and I'm playing an economic game.
Nice. What do you think about that, Andy?
Sounds more entertaining than watching regular football.
I figured Andy would take this moment an opportunity to crap on sports and everything else that normal people like.
You know.
Oh, man.
Most people who know me, I don't think would ever consider me normal. So, you know, we
No, Andy, I would actually say that you are intentionally abnormal. Like that's if I could describe you in a phrase, intentionally abnormal.
I did tell my principal if he has a bigger nerd on staff, let me know because I'm going to beat them.
You're going to out-nerd them. You're going to, like, go and name all the Doctor Who's just in the middle of the hallway. You're going to look at them, stare them down, you know, act like you're going to hit them, and then instead just start spouting off phrases of like, experimental physical science. You know, you just start, like, reciting the rule book from memory to High Frontier.
Yeah, well, we'll put it this way. If occasionally I get my middle school students who are now high schoolers coming back to me, and apparently the high school teacher occasionally complains because all my previous students are like, it was so much more fun with Mr. Dennison. Terrifying, but fun.
I can understand the terrifying part of it.
Oh, yeah. No, honestly, that sounds interesting. Like that kind of statistics and stuff is kind of where my brain would go with it, too.
Yeah, I think, Trent, what's interesting, though, is to hear you say it's going to be a good year. Because to me, like, having been – I've started a league that continually grew to the point where I just totally lost interest in fantasy football. This happened, I think, 2 years ago. It happened throughout the season that I realized, like, I would so much rather play just a regular board game than have something that has this sort of a format. Because to me, what fantasy football at the start, like you kind of want to do what you're saying, like do your number crunching, do your watching, like who's going to be the big prospects. I think that honestly, Trent, you kind of have to balance the number game together with, watching what the best recruits are. What are the best, flying under the radar guys? There probably is some sort of number crunching going to happen when you're looking at guys that are especially rookies that are coming and playing the league for the first time. But the main thing that I really took issue with in fantasy football was that it felt like the person that was in the best shape halfway through the season was not the person that had the best, mathematical team at the beginning. I felt like injuries impacted that so much. And to me, like my first year, I really tolerated a lot of it. Like I drafted one of the best wide receivers in the whole game. And he just inexplicably would not play for certain games. And it was like later on revealed that it was because he was nursing some sort of an injury, but it wasn't very much public knowledge. It was never anything that was ever recorded in the fantasy football like stats that are now consistently updated and probably have thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people on every unique server for fantasy football. And it's such a huge industry. And you're able to I felt like I was almost to the point where I was in tune to when my players were taking a crap because of how much I cared about their health. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. It's so much based on who's able to stay healthy and who's able to. I felt like the worst part of it was that fantasy is always tainted by bull crap, just bull points. Like Antonio Davis on the Steelers was this, receiver that was a really great receiver, but he would play in a game where they just totally shut him down. But then they'd get down like 30, 35 points, and then the other team would take out their big names, their big players, to keep them healthy. And then Antonio Davis would pick up as many fantasy points in one game. And I actually had this guy on my team when this happened. So, I was the one that was sitting there benefiting from this. But I was picking up all these fantasy points from a guy who wasn't actually impacting the outcome of the game. And so it felt to me like it was almost this sort of weird pseudo anti-coaching system. Andy, what do you have to say?
I said, so it's like real football.
Oh, of course. Andy, your opinion here, your input is entirely trolling. That's all that is. Troll-lo-lo-lo-lo. So my issue with fantasy is that, the same thing I'd take issue with in a game that feels to me like Roll for Success, except here your dice are bouncing up and down on the table across 12 weeks. And it's finally starting to come apparent of what's going to be what. But then you play these games, and the way that they set up your bracket at the end of the season is just so arbitrary. Like I end up paired with you, Trent. I score 131 points. You score 130 points. I advance. However, the guy who got paired up with somebody else who scored 70 points, even though he only scored 70 points, he had a terrible week, that other guy only scored 60. So much of it is just based on matchings and pair-ups, and you're never able to keep so many guys on your bench, especially not once you get above 10 players in a league, that you're actually able to make meaningful decisions about who plays what. It's all about who pays the most attention throughout the season. That's, of course, something that to me is not so much skill-based as it is just economy-based, and your economy in that way is time. And that's why I've really chosen to abandon fantasy football. I wish you the best of luck, and may all of your guys take the healthiest poops and stay healthy throughout the season.
Okay, will do.
Oh man, I'm sorry, dude. I had a rough day. It's been a long one. It's been a long, busy day.
Man, this main topic's gonna be great.
Oh yeah, it's like stressing me out. I'm not sure what's gonna happen. Oh gosh. Trent, honestly, dude, if you do win your fantasy football league, please do it like what Jerry does with his winnings and buy board games. Just like you did with all your Magic cards that you have from 1993, all your Black Lotus copies that you just got this play set that you're selling out once every 5 years to just fund all of your board game purchases the rest of your life. Do that with your money you win, all right?
I will. It's going to go into other hobbies at the very least. I can't guarantee board games, but it's going to be a hobby.
Well, sir, good luck to you. And that's fantasy football from a gamer's perspective. Now, Andy, please tell us about something about your mom, the trading card game.
It's about my mom.
Oh, Andy.
It involves cards. And trade them.
I think that, Andy, it's more about the hypothetical concept of your mom. Maybe something more about, like, you know, insulting each other, funny things. Like, these things sell lots of copies on Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, we're going to have Friday night Your Mom draft leagues. And
Andy's not actually talking about that, guys. If you see that in our show notes, Trent snuck one past me, and I thought it might be another one of those types of games. And anyway, it's not. Andy's not talking about anything to do
going
with
right on the shelf by. It's going right on the shelf by Tantokoro.
Oh, yes. By the good old, like, hentai, the Dominion clone that's terrible. Anyway.
No, I was just going to kind of update people on I got to play 1846 this last weekend over at Joe's place with some people that were, you know, not like crazy 18xx players like I am at this point.
Like 1846 was pushing it, I would say. It was like it was the right spot, but you know, usually, Andy, I imagine that you're probably, what you said is a lot of people you play with have kind of moved on. And anyway, this was a comfortable spot. We had one brand new player to the entire genre. So.
Yeah, he did pretty good, actually. The only thing I kind of felt bad about it. So anyway, just as a brief one. So 1846 is what I consider to be one of the two best teaching games for 18xx's. Although
together with 1889, right?
Right. But 1846, I do somewhat agree with the statement of 1846 is the 18xx game when you're only going to play 1846. Mm-hmm. Just because it's different enough from the base system. But the benefits of it are there are still some very cool things that you can do with it. Because I tried this crazy thing I saw Tony do on a heavy cardboard live stream, where I basically used one company to buy a bunch of trains to sell for $1 to another company, and then basically destroy the first company and close it. So I just basically pillaged it for trains and made most of my money back. The only thing I felt bad about was I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. It's either going to make me win pretty well or lose horribly. And then I won really well, and I'm like, dang it, teaching.
I was close to you, though, Andy. I was still close to you.
No, yeah. I mean, in reality, like, the scores were not that far off for anyone. It was a really good game. It was
about like
so it wasn't like a shutout or something.
Something like that. $300, $400. I mean, it was like decisive, but not like I didn't feel like I was at all killed.
No. It wasn't like a threat. Yeah, you definitely did better than you thought you were going to do mid-game. We'll give that.
Yeah, but I mean, I kind of knew all along that I had this. Well, no, there was a few doors that I really did jump through when they opened for me. So it was so weird because in this game, I don't mean to take your steam here, Andy. Choo-choo. But the game for me was so strange. I started the B&O company, and I ended up with my stock price dropping down to $20 a share. But every single round, I was by far the most profitable company out there. It was just how many of those rounds did I withhold is the question. And had I not done it, I don't think I would have even been close to Andy. I think that Andy really did something special for himself in this really weird, interesting start game that I've never seen happen before.
Yeah, you can only do it on the weird ones where you can like just permanently shut down a company. Because, yeah, if you were to try something that nuts in an 89 or an 1830, it would just hang around your neck and strangle you because... yeah, I don't know. So 1846, I still enjoy. I think it does still hold the capability that it's interesting for experienced 18xxers, but still good as a teaching game for other 18xx players. And there's not anything too crazy you can do to really make somebody's day horrible in it. So I don't know. It plays well with a lot. I really enjoyed getting it out again and playing it and trying some weird stuff with it and different things. And, even though I played a lot of different 18xx's, this one still has things to explore in it. And so I'm still happy to get it to the table, especially when I'm teaching new people that, get enjoyment out of it and they start seeing what's great about the system and kind of getting their first experience. It's my version of, somebody showing somebody that first gateway game that gets them into the hobby. That's kind of me with 1846. So what's the first game I can get to bring you into, the train game world or the heavy game world? That's how I try to grow the hobby.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Andy, you did a great job. I'm not gonna lie, dude. It was a great job. I appreciate that you let me take some of the teaching, but you really did a great job just making sure all the fundamentals were nailed. Things were really ready to go. Andy had it all counted out of how much money we used, like before we even started. It was just one of those experiences. To me, it was smooth, and it really the only thing that kept it from going fast was the fact that we had new players and inexperienced players, and I think honestly,
we were like eating supper too and talking. I mean, we weren't like just like going to town on it or anything. So
that's true. So, 1846 to me, an update of that. It still did, so many of the moments where I stared at the board and I started doing the sort of like 7 + 6 + 5 + 8 + 9, and I only get to take 4 of those. So that, do that math problem. And then now this way I could go this way because I ended up with being able to run – I literally could have run 2 east-west routes with what I had and where I was built with the P&O. But I didn't do that because it wasn't as profitable as just running one straight from Louisville up to Detroit and another one from the Charlottesville, I think is the one in the southeast there. Kind of weird where the C&O starts. And then the one like that. St. Louis. But I ran one east-west pretty much every time, but then I was able to run my second most profitable was not an east-west route, which, of course, took a significant amount of time, which, I mean, to me, it's okay. I guess I'm entertained when I'm doing it. I'm less entertained when other people are doing that math in their heads. I feel like still, the spreadsheet is probably the way that I would prefer to have some sort of spreadsheet that just calculates everything. I still haven't seen that happen. Very enjoyable experience. So, Andy, I'll keep playing 1846 with you. I think that it's one of those where the only complaints or qualms I'd ever have with the game are, at this point, inherent to the system without some sort of revelatory technological advancement. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like not saying that there's anything inherently wrong, but I don't think that there's any really issues that I have with the system that haven't already been voiced in other things. So yeah, I had fun.
It's a good time.
Right, and that was 1846, a little update from Andy. Yeah, you got here just in time. Adam has joined our chat. Please, guys, those of you that are listening to this, know that we do record these live on YouTube, and I just love hearing from our community. I mean, like, I've gotten to the point where I just understand and love the opinions and input, and I try to listen and say things about them. I know what games you guys that have been here on the chat enjoy. I know favorite games from different people, and just come to our YouTube channel. Click subscribe on the good, the bored, and the ugly. I'm saying this to all of you that are listening on iTunes, that are listening there in your car. I want you to press that little button on your phone that lets you make a voice command. Do not take your eyes off the road. I want you to say, when I get home, remind me to subscribe to the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly YouTube channel. I want you there. I also want you to follow me on Twitter. I want you guys to be a part of this, okay? I want you to be a part of this. I want to grow this, okay? Anyway, now I'm going to tell you guys about a game, and I'm excited to talk about it. There's already been some talk about it in our chat, which you guys that are listening in the car should check out sometime later. Anyway, just so you know, there's been some talk about Pax Porfiriana in our chat, and I'm going to tell about my thoughts of PAX Renaissance. Spoiler alert. PAX Renaissance was in the running for my Spiel of Dreams, the personal game of the year that I give. It was one of the finalists, but it's kind of like my game of the year game. My game that, to me, best depicts or best exemplifies in an enormous amount of decisions and not so enormous, like in a fraction of the amount of time that you'd expect them to take. And PAX Renaissance may actually be the best at that specific equation that I just mentioned, that specific Salin coefficient. Anyway, PAX Renaissance to me was just, and when I first played it, I thought, holy crap, because I played PAX Pamir, really thought PAX Pamir was interesting, wanted to play PAX Pamir more, and then PAX Renaissance kind of came, and unfortunately in just every sphere and in my own mind, like PAX Ren just became this amazing dangling carrot in front of my face, and I had to play it, had to try it out, got to play it with Jeff Gamble, loved it my first game, thought it was so cool. And then we played it, Andy, right before we played 1846, which we go from PAX Ren to 1846. Man, this is a pretty decent day, right? And we could
that's a good day in my book.
we could both be on board for that, and that was really cool. So PAX Renaissance is a game from Phil Eklund in which you are building a tableau. You are taking a simple 2 actions every turn, generally taking cards and playing cards and activating those cards. There are many other actions that are all supplementary actions. That might be a one-shot action when you play a card, might be an action that you're able to take whenever you run your operations. Think kind of Twilight Struggle where you run operations. This is very different though, because you're going to activate one icon on every card in your tableau. Icons range from anything from being able to control the economy or some aspect of this sort of quote-unquote battlefield that's going on in Renaissance Europe. You play the role of a banker. It is the thesis of the game is about how bankers ultimately played a very large role and are arguably the most responsible for creating the idea of humanism and the idea that Renaissance sort of individualism that emerged from the Renaissance. It is a very compelling argument because when you think about it, feudalism, the status quo before the Renaissance was all about people basically being owned because they were attached to land that was owned by lords. When it became about your own work, your own contribution to society was really tied to banks and the Renaissance, because it was then that you started to think not that I'm stuck in my way, I'm stuck in my case system, whether it was actually externally verbalized or whatever, but it became more about what you could contribute that really determined your worth. A very compelling argument for me specifically, something I try to tell my students all the time. You can think you're the biggest, bestest athlete, the most intelligent individual, but if you aren't willing to put in the work to make that clear to others, then nobody will know it. And will it truly be the case? Anyway, PAX Ren, after that existential, that sort of deep description, is a game that in our game, Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but every player at the table at one point felt that they were totally screwed. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, yeah, pretty much everywhere at some point.
And every player at the table also felt at one point like they had the game locked down.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, because at one point I looked at it was a 3-player game. I looked at the other player besides Andy, it was my little brother Will. I looked at him and I thought, Andy's got this. Andy has basically been sitting over there and we haven't been doing anything about him. Me and you have been fighting over economic control of Western Europe while he's been sitting there taking over country after country with his Ottoman horde. And then later on, there was a point where I felt like I had the game on lockdown, where I had contested Andy and I'd beaten him to a stalemate in mid-Central Europe. All this stuff, guys, sounds like something that would take a game on scale of diplomacy or Here I Stand to make these things happen. And this game somehow is able to do it with a small deck of cards, pieces that look like chess pieces, a great thematic equivalent. And not that much footprint or time footprint. And to me, the resolution, the final winner of the game was at one point finally clear. But to me, it was so cool how it all came about. It was so interesting how there was so many different victory conditions we could each go for that we never felt like we were out of it. I loved how my little brother was just controlling the economy. Anytime I wanted to get a single dollar, I had to run a trade fair that benefited him exponentially more than it benefited me. And it was like I had all the armies, but he had all the money. And it was this interesting decision space that I could not believe was contained in such a small box, and I loved it. PAX Renaissance, with more and more plays, I just think it was so interesting. To me, it fired on thematic cylinders and mechanical cylinders, and honestly, there's just so much meat there. Yes, it's swingy. Yes, it can feel like you're screwed, and you actually are. But to me, it really is worth giving the system a fair shot. If you've never enjoyed another game by Phil Eklund, this to me does not feel like the sort of simulationist game on its own. I get that sort of entertainment by the theme, but I also feel like I'm not having to sacrifice the actual gameplay for it. What do you gentlemen think about that?
It's far and away my favorite PAX game.
Go ahead, Trent.
That's really all I have. That's pretty much all I have to say about it.
How about you, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think, like I'll play the other PAX games, and I like them for different reasons. I think PAX Ren, Renaissance is probably the best in terms of depth of all the PAX games. It's definitely like I don't know of a more opaque game to try to tease out what you're supposed to be doing with than this game. There's just huge decisions. There's a lot to keep track of. It's really cool. I would say if there's a negative to it, it's that this is probably the hardest PAX game to learn and figure out. I listened to Heavy Cardboard talking about it. They said, they were 5 plays in and still, looking at the rule book very frequently to make sure they knew what was going on. What do I do to do this? How do I do this? And I would say that's probably true of this game. This is definitely a game that after 10 plays, you might be starting to have an idea of how you go about winning this game on a consistent basis. It's the kind of game that if you're not going to be able to play it multiple times, I would recommend maybe just not getting it, because it's not going to shine the first time or even the second time or maybe even the 4th or 5th time, depending on kind of your skill level with Phil Eklund games as well as your understanding of those. But if you give it that amount of time, I think this game is eminently worth the price tag. There's Kickstarter games that cost 3 times as much and have loads more in the box that have less gameplay than this $30 small box from Sierra Madre. So that's what I have to say about it. Other than if it sounds intriguing to you at all from what I've said or what Joe said or Trent said about it, go buy it quickly, because Phil Eklund games go out of stock like crazy fast, and then you're going to find yourself paying 4 times the MSRP if you want it.
This is very true, and I can't even find the PAX Renaissance expansion, which you had, Andy, and we were able to play with, and it, just changes things about the game that to me felt like easy to integrate.
Yeah, I don't think it's that hard to put the expansion in with it myself. I even bought the 5 cards they had off BGG because I was like, I must have all the PAX Ren.
There's new stuff. I could see myself buying that off of BGG as well.
I have played it solo.
PAX Ren solo?
Yes.
How does that go?
I basically just play it 2-handed.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Okay.
That is
what do you
worth noting that I think this one doesn't have solo play as an option. So, you can play it against yourself as solo, but, PAX Porphyriana and Pamir both have solo variants that have been made for it. I don't know if you could do that with Pax Ren though. There's a lot more things.
You've got to play it multiplayer. But here's the thing: there really isn't much actual hidden information in it. I mean, you know all the cards that are in a person's hand, in effect.
Right.
You're paying attention. So I just laid the cards down on the table, treated it as open-handed, and moved back and forth between the players. And it worked fine. It was actually rather interesting. I was trying to figure out how to stop. Okay, I'm doing this with this player. How do I stop it as this player? By back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I've actually enjoyed that. That was fun to me.
No, that would be interesting because that's the kind of thing I'm liking about Hollandspiel games. When I've been looking at it, it's a lot of these games in this weird eclectic area I'm looking at. They're all kind of like about balance. So it's like, you know, I give a little, you get a little, I need you to stop you here. And then like the first time that balance is really disrupted, it like just swings into the winner. I don't know. And I'm finding these kind of things really interesting in their setup. So yeah, Pax Ren, definitely really glad I have it. Really glad I'm playing it. My name's in the rule book, which is awesome. Because I helped play test it a little bit. So anyway, yeah, Pax Ren's awesome. Yeah, like I said, if it sounds interesting, go get it before it's unavailable, because once it's unavailable, you're going to be looking at several years before you can find a copy again at a reasonable price.
I think they're hitting critical mass, though, Andy. I think that this, as well as Splatter, like, it's tough for these guys to fly under the radar much anymore. Like, we're not doing as much to grow the community as many other larger media outlets are, but the impact of those media outlets and our small contribution is, I think, getting much more measurable, much more becoming more than just a blip, and becoming much more of a center. So anyway, Andy, where'd you get your shirt before we move on?
Oh, that's what I'm trying to remember. Blah.
Didn't you get it from isn't that company closed now where you got it?
No, they were, and then they reopened.
Board game, something like apparel. I forget.
Yeah.
Didn't they run a Kickstarter and then
they did a Kickstarter, and then there was some weirdness that happened where it kind of shut down for a while, but it reopened under another website. I don't know. I'll take a look for it as we talk and try to link it in chat when I find it, because it's going to take me a few minutes.
No worries, man. All right. So anyway, that was my take on PAX Renaissance, a game that I'm really just excited, and it has so many. I'd never read a Phil Eklund rulebook, and there were so many different perspectives. I felt like, to me, it felt like a really great college class, like the great courses things that I used to listen to with my dad in the car with books on tape, where you'd really be entertained by some of the better ones. And to me, Pax Ren really hits on that. I've never read any of his other rule books, so I'm not going to say that I'm necessarily going to consider myself in the Phil Eklund camp now. But, you know, if he keeps on coming out with games in the future like this one, and I'm able to learn about other games he's made maybe similar, not necessarily the same thing, but just, you know, that same sort of appreciation for the theme, as well as not having to sacrifice any of the gameplay. That's what I love about PAX Renaissance. So that's something that the excitement that I get, and the sort of losing myself in the moment of talking about these games, is quite a big thing to me, and one of the biggest reasons I could come up with to segue into our topic, which is, why do we do this? Trent, you were the man who was most spearheading this as a podcast topic. I'd love to hear you set the stage for the discussion that will follow.
Okay. Part of the reason I wanted to talk about this is there's been a lot of discussion online about the reasons that people review. Is it purely monetary? Is it purely to become, quote, famous? Is it self-congratulations about the amount of followers you can accumulate? Is this some sort of internal pride thing? Is it just talking about games? What is it? Why do people do this? Honestly, I'll tell you why I do this. Why I'm on this podcast is one simple reason. I have a very busy schedule. I enjoy talking with all of my co-hosts, past and present. So that would mean Jonathan and Joe and Andy about gaming. I love just sitting around.
TC too, man. There's been tons of guests that I've just, I agree. I'm sorry, Trent. I don't mean to interrupt, but there's been a lot of contributors. But I'm sorry, dude.
Honestly, for me, it's not the contributors. TC sucks. I mean, wait, did I say that? Sorry.
TC, you answer, sir. You answer to that. Well, Trent, one day, man, you're gonna be stuck in a game of Twilight Imperium 3, and TC is gonna be like set to attack another player. You're gonna empty your forces, and TC's gonna look at you, and you're gonna know.
The guests have been fine, but honestly, the reason I do this is I don't get spend as much time as I would like hanging out and playing games with my local game group. And this is the best substitute I have in my life for that, is it gives me an opportunity to talk to the guys in my local game group that I enjoy hanging out with. And I'm very, very busy. I don't have the time to go to game nights. I have 3 young children that are all in different things all the time, and a weird career that I won't even get into that keeps me weirdly engaged. And that just means that windows for gaming are very hard for me to have on a regular basis. And I really enjoy my local game group, and this is my window to talk to other gamers in my local game group. That is the sole reason I'm on this podcast. I tried reviewing in the past. It's not my thing. I gave it a sincere shot. I didn't like the having to do it day in and day out part. And I found that it was, if I stopped doing it day in and day out, I just stopped doing it, period. So for me, the reason I'm here solely is to talk to you two. I don't even care whether there's guests or not. I don't really care. But that's why I'm here. My motivation is to talk to my gamer friends. Period.
Gosh, man. I love you too, Trent. Andy?
What? I was finding gamer teeth. No, I heard what Trent said. It's much appreciated.
Cardboard clothing is the answer. And Andy, you are wearing a shirt for everybody who's listening on the podcast that can't see it that says Baltimore and Ohio. He's actually wearing the shirt of the actual railway I controlled in our last game of 1846, but I'm pretty sure that shirt is about more than just that railway in 1846, right?
Yeah, it's about 1830 mainly, or that's what the shirt's based on. The best part is when I'm walking around and people are like, "Oh, you really like trains?" And I'm like, "No, numbers." they just kind of look at me confused.
That's Andy. That's Andy. Well, Trent, I think that what you said to me is the central ingredient to what has kept us going. I think that I personally enjoy that. I don't want to speak for Andy, but I enjoy the same thing that you do in terms of being able to continue discussions that would prevent us from ever actually playing a game at a game night. Being able to do that here and now, and do it within this discussion-based sort of roundtable, and to do it now, I think that being able to inject sources and views into that, to me, let's put it like this. I don't just record this podcast, okay? Like, it's not something that I think about. Like, we record this at about 8:45 every night on Thursdays every week. And it's not something that I start doing at 8:45. It's something that I am usually, for any topic we're going to talk about, I'm usually considering it and having sort of auxiliary discussions to get perspectives from people that can offer different things. And that could include you guys. Sometimes I pick your guys' brain for what I'm actually going to say about things. It could include others on the hobby. It can include the board game, the Good Board Ugly Slack channel. And I think that, to me, it's what you mentioned, Trent, is the single absolutely necessary ingredient to make it work. And I think that without that, that is the foundation on which it is built, if that makes any sense. So, Andy, what about you?
I do it, or I like to do it, I think, just for communicating with people. You know, like some people want to do it professionally, some want to do it casually. I'm kind of somewhere in between, maybe. Like I don't ever really want to do it professionally, because for me, if you're professional, that ends up really limiting what you want to do, because then to be professional, you got to crank out the content fast enough. You've got to, you know, play the new hotness enough. It's harder to dive into weird tangents of odd corners of the gaming world that I like to do. So I think for me, it's just kind of fun to talk to people. Like it's really weird, but it took me a lot of my life to figure out that I'm not an introverted person. I'm a socially awkward person, and anyone who spent enough time with me will realize that fairly quickly. But
yes,
yeah. So it's fair. I own it. It's basically like I'm socially awkward, but I'm an extrovert. If I understand the rules of a community, like I can function pretty well within it, and it really energizes me to talk to other people about things we're passionate about. So talking to you guys, talking to people on Twitter, just that communication is something that makes me feel energized and happy and fulfilled. It's not like, you know, for an introvert, doing all of this social stuff is very difficult. You need time to kind of relax and chill and get away from that. But for me, it makes me feel good. Like I want that communication. I want to sit down and play games with people. I like talking to them on Twitter, sharing stories, sharing parts of our lives. That kind of thing is just something that I find really cool. And then I'm in a similar situation to Trent, where, you know, I'm a father. I have 2 children. I have a wonderful wife who you know, is awesome. But that all takes up time. Like I don't have time to game as much as I would like to if I didn't have children. I don't have time to talk with people because, you know, the other issue is I very much have a geek brain. I just assume that other people's obsessions are the same as my obsession. And so if I don't watch myself, I can find myself like talking about games or science or something to someone. And like after 30 minutes, now I realize they're not actually listening to me and they would just really like me to shut up for a while. So being on a podcast kind of gives me that outlet to talk to people, to communicate, to try things. And I think one of the best things that's come out of it for me is finding the good people in the hobby. You know, the good, wonderful people that even as small as a platform as I have, I can kind of maybe shine some kind of light on them and hopefully watch them achieve success. Not saying that, you know, I'm the reason they succeeded, but just I like to bring out the parts of the hobby that most people don't go to look at. So, you know, one of my favorite companies right now is Hollandspiel, this little print-on-demand sort of war game, funky, weird company. And, you know, I'm trying to share their stuff. I'm like, look at this. This is some really cool, unique, odd stuff that you won't find in your Asmodee catalog. And for me, that's fulfilling. And, you know, it's nice to occasionally be, you know, that odd occasion where someone's like, hey, I like the way you present information, or hey, I really like the games you talk about. You know, I'm not saying that happens a lot for me. It's happened a time or two, and that's really nice to feel like that. I mean, everyone likes to feel like what you're doing has an impact in the world, which is one of the reasons I'm a teacher, because I like having that feeling as well. So the podcasting is just kind of another way to do that, to kind of reach out and meet people of like interests. Because to me, that's kind of the greatest thing about online in general. You know, growing up, being a nerd or geeky person, you often felt alone and like people were out to punish you and all that kind of stuff. But when you reach out online, you really can find people, you know, who to a lesser degree, greater degree, are like you as well, that like the same things you like. And that's very empowering, I think, to do that. so that's why I enjoy it. I think there are those feelings and those connections I get not only with you guys, but with other people online.
Well, thanks, Andy. Yeah, definitely. It's about those connections which go deep into the roots of the podcast, which underground involves being able to play with one another, but then at the same time, those branches out can include all different people from the hobby, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was nice, for example, to go to HeavyCon and meet face-to-face people I'd been talking on online, Twitter, email, that kind of stuff. And it really wasn't that awkward. I mean, I'd just go up, when I met Travis from Low Player Count, I'm like, hey, Travis, right? Low Player Count. And he's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, hey, it's Andy. He's like, oh, yeah, Andy, GBU Twitter. We talk all the time. It's great. And that kind of stuff. And it was just nice to have that human connection, even though it started online. It kind of became something else. And, for people who are into a little bit, not mainstream things like I am, that's what's really great about having that online presence.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can feel like you're not just starting from square one and actually just like your presence is out there, like your personality is something that people have become familiar with, which interestingly enough may be a double-edged sword in some cases, but that might just be because the way I got to conduct myself that I can feel like that sometimes. So Andy, no, it's really interesting, that perspective and how that compares, contrasts, the threads that you share with Trent, those that you've added on to that. And I feel kind of like I'm probably somewhere around there, but I would like to then at the same time turn a mirror onto myself. So really, I don't ever feel like I'm not a perfect individual. I don't think that my view on anything is the one best view out there. And honestly, it has been to enjoy at first when I started this, Andy, I would say that similar to you, the reason that we both teach is that we are out there to corrupt and to infest. Correct? Like we are corrupting and infesting everybody, including the youth, including the people who listen to this. Consider yourself corrupted. And I think though that what's happened is that as we've tackled different topics in this hobby, being able to hear reactions in a appropriate setting to what I say and think and do, and being able to provide in many ways a counter or a foil to others in their perspectives and opinions, to me has helped me to grow in many different directions that I never would have thought. And as a result, I would say that I feel like in this point, a lot of the perspectives I can offer aren't great perspectives because they're my perspectives. They're better perspectives because I've had a chance to hear a lot of different voices. And I know I'm going to talk here about something that almost embarrasses me to use as a reference, but there's this country song out there that's something about hearing voices. Like I hear voices all the time, and then it goes into mentioning how they're my voices, like my grandma telling me to do this, my mom telling me to do this, and of course that's all about the country song, like that sort of thing. And I'm really apologize if that in any way undermines the point I'm trying to make. But whenever I am going to do or say something, I hear voices, but they're not just mine. They're not just voices. They're perspectives. They're all of the different individuals and what they've come to bring to this community that has been built underneath me. I don't consider myself really that much of a part of it because I feel like if I had done it, then we'd probably all effing hate each other, because that's just something that I'm really good at doing. I'm great at being a teacher because I can make an entire room full of people hate me in less than 5 minutes. Anyway, the thing is, guys, I use hyperbole at times, but there's always a little bit of truth in it. The thing is, to me, the reason I continue doing it is because I enjoy the individuals I do it with. It's because I enjoy the perspectives that I feel like I'm now able to offer because we do this. And if it's any indication, I think that there is at some point a deeper understanding of what is, I don't know, what is the end goal of a gaming experience. And I feel like if we can talk about that can be at least a part of the discussion. I feel like so many times, and this here, Trent, maybe will breed into what you were, maybe where this topic came from kind of discussions we were participating in that were on BGG, on Reddit, is that so many times your reviewers out there are individuals that are more concerned with the aesthetics of a review, with the sort of just general positivity, with just without actually offering perspectives, but more just putting out very irrefutable because it's not actually saying anything, to me, very content devoid reviews. I think that there is, at a certain level, there is just a lot of people that are out there. A lot, not people. I shouldn't say people. There's a lot of reviews that get released. All right, let's not talk about the people. Let's just talk about reviews. Let's not mention any individuals that are just really not the sort of media that is deserving of a hobby that, to my opinion, can be comparable to great literature, to great film, to great video games, even to great video games. And in my opinion, it's strange when the video gaming sphere has reviewers and a presence on Metacritic. And I don't feel like with board games, that sort of endeavor is even possible at this current time. We are in turbulence as reviewers. There are so many reviewers that are consistently under attack. I'm not going to say that is not deserved. If all you provide to the hobby is a glorified advertisement for a game. But I don't think that's what I'm trying to do. I hope in some ways I've at least outlined some of the things I come to this for, some of the things that are my goals. I'm not going to be my own critic. I'm not going to be my own judge. I am my own critic. I should say that I am my own critic, but what I say about myself is always so biased it's unusable. So if I ever come up with a review of a board game I designed, think of it in that light, the same way. But at least that's what I'm trying to do is provide at some level an outlet of board game media that it hopefully will be able to legitimize what is such an amazing hobby that we participate in, that has offered so many amazing productions, so many, just to, in my opinion, the projects, the labors of love in this hobby deserve the sort of attention, the sort of collective acknowledgement that other hobby, that not, I don't even say hobbies, other forms of media deserve. And that's why I do it. Does that in any way sound completely is that let me put it like this, guys. Am I on cloud nine, and am I going to fall to the earth very quickly after one of you says something?
I think board game media is kind of it's a weird, unique thing, because essentially what a lot of reviewers are they're fans of games already. Mm-hmm. So because if you wanted to be like a true reviewer, I don't know a better way to say that, I mean, essentially that needs to be your livelihood. You need to devote hours and hours and hours into the games to know what they're doing, to know what they're about, to be able to really dissect them. And I mean, let's face it, the vast majority of us in the hobby, as us of content providers in the hobby, are doing this on our own time purely for the enjoyment of doing it. It's what time we can spare or carve out of our schedule to do it, right? Mm-hmm. And the question really then is, how much the hobby can support critics that are paid.
But who is paying them is also quite important.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if it's coming from, that's the big joke about video game reviewers, is you can't trust them because they're all, hey, IGN, we're giving you $20,000. Tell everyone our game's great. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to find trust in there. And it's hard to I don't know.
If board games are as big as video games, we would be board games would be facing those exact same issues.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
so maybe the fact that we're being challenged with these issues about paid reviewers as reviewers kind of coming under attack is almost saying like this is growing and our community expects something of us. Does that sound fair?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I don't know. Like, I think it's hard to figure it out. Like, it's so much of kind of like what I tell my daughter, you know, when she was into chess. I said, you've got to set your expectations where you want them, try to meet those expectations, and don't get ahead of yourself or don't get behind you. You know, set your expectations and stick with it. So, you know, for example, right now, you know, Heavy Cardboard Edwards quit his, you know, what was his main job, and he's now trying to basically, I think, become a professional content creator. That's awesome. And watching him work, I mean, he's trying to put his money where his mouth is. He's, you know, kicking out stuff left and right. Me, on the other hand, like, I can't say that I want to be a professional reviewer. No, I don't. I really don't. I like producing content. I'm pleased that there is some kind of audience that seems to appreciate it and enjoy it. But I don't want to be a professional reviewer. I don't want those deadlines of creating content. I don't want my gaming choices to be restricted to, you know, what I think the audience wants rather than what I would want to play. Maybe that's selfish. I don't know. But pick the level you want to be a part of the hobby and go with it and be happy with that. You know, for example, and I think Trent kind of was, you know, agreeing to this, you know, we don't need on our podcast or whatever to do our live stream. We don't need $500 cameras, you know, or super microphones. I think we produce content that is decent at a quality that's acceptable. And I think in some ways that's maybe all we want out of it. And that's fine, you know? And so if somebody criticizes us for quality here, there, or the other, I mean, we can try to improve on it. But bottom line, I'm not going to go out and buy a $300 microphone just to sound awesome, because that's not where I'm entering this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Andy, I'm with you 100%. And to basically say, without spending, like you mentioned, spending physical money, and for me, considering that I, you know, like my life is quite different than your guys's, you know, like the amount of time that you guys get, you know, the fact that we have this scheduled at a specific time is very important to you guys because of how much, you know, being a part of your family and, you know, being a central figure is important. And to me, like, I have quite a bit more freedom to invest that time into making reviews. And what I found is that when I make a review and I spend quite a bit of time in like post-production trying to put together different perspectives and angles and commentary, it's still nothing like the big good reviews out there, like Shut Up and Sit Down, no pun included, have been mentioned in our comments, and I added no pun included, I should say. Shut Up and Sit Down was mentioned. Love the stuff that those guys come out with, but let's consider it. That's like one review in 7 days, and from what I understand, that's pretty much the main like endeavor, the main job, career that these guys undertake. Now, of course, there's a lot of other auxiliary parts of being who they are and what they do. But, you know, like that's what it takes for them to come up with a review that's on that sort of level. And to me, what I found is that I personally, like, I think my favorite ways to do reviews is to sit down, write as much as I possibly can, just stream of thought, something I never plan on releasing to the public. I've got pages upon pages of these reviews of games that are never going to be released to the public because I plan on verbalizing those in a review and doing it in such a way that I don't have to do post-production, that the amount of work I have to put in is very minimal, because not work, so to say, because the work to me that is rewarding is when I'm able to give what I hope is a perspective that informs, entertains, and in some way, hopefully is useful to those that listen to it or watch it. And I think that, like, for example, in the most recent video I did, Vanuatu, I was able to do an entire review in one shot without doing any post-production editing, try to do a walkthrough as a part of it, make just all the different stuff. Like, to me, that was super rewarding. I felt great after doing it. Whereas after previous reviews I've done, whenever I've tried to really get quote-unquote interesting with my cinematography and stuff, I've not invested any money here, Andy. We're not talking like $300 cameras. I still shot everything on cameras that people can probably point to and be like, dude, you shot that on your phone. Yes, okay, fine. I shot it on my phone. But it took a long time, and it took me all night to upload on my potato connection. It was a lot of work, and then I had to do stuff with it after I did that. And anyway, when I got done with it, I didn't feel so much like, I'm so happy to have done this. I felt more like, here, I've finally done this. You guys better appreciate it. And that's the way that if I've ever approached a lesson that I've taught where I spent all night working on it, and then I tried to teach it to my students, and my idea, my attitude towards it was, I gave myself to this. I did things I didn't enjoy for this. You better appreciate it. That's never good. Absolutely not. You're never going to have a good lesson go off that way. No matter how quality the lesson is, you have to be just as excited about it when you teach it. Just like for me, I had to be just as excited about what I had done when I was done with it than I was when I started it. And to me, all the video editing drained that from me. It was not something I could do. I guess in a way, it made me realize the limits of what it is that I am here for. Why am I here? Does that in any way, Trent, mimic your experience with videos?
Yeah, I don't really care about the feedback I was getting. There were certain things I wanted to achieve, and I wasn't making myself happy in making them, and that's why I quit. I've never, ever been very motivated by like metrics or what other people are saying or thinking. And it doesn't really matter. My experience has been that is if you're doing something for yourself and putting it in your heart into it, people will come. It will happen. I mean, you can always say, well, some sort of factor external to you may make a difference. But in the end, what really matters is whether or not your heart is into it. And I was disappointed in the content I was making on my own terms, so that's why I stopped making videos. It had nothing to do with what anyone else was saying, whether or not I was getting views. I actually thought my viewership metrics were pretty good. I had well over 1,000 subscribers fairly quickly on YouTube. Like, it was pretty rapid that I had that many. And so I think number-wise I would have been fine, but I wasn't happy with the videos I was putting out, so I stopped doing them. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with that too. Is I think, you've got to be satisfied with what you're doing with it. Otherwise, it's not, really worth doing. And I mean, the thing that can be a struggle sometimes, and I've never really seen this too much on our stuff, but I've seen it on other people's stuff where, basically it can take you 10, 12 hours to make something you think is great. And then someone could just take a massive dump on it in less than like 2 minutes. And because they don't realize what you put into it, or they don't care to realize or think about it. And so, that can be very discouraging and rough for some people. If that's what you focus or pay attention to, that can be a real downer. I just pretty much don't. But I see a lot of people who, they put a lot of work into something and produce something far better than I ever could, whether it's written, video, whatever. And then people are just instantaneously taking a dump on it. They're like, oh, this would only be good if you did that, or where do you get that crazy opinion? And so, that can be tough. And so, yeah, if you're doing it for external validation, that's probably not a good thing to be on the internet if you're looking for that, because it's going to get rough, man. So I don't know, like, I don't do this to see how many people come up to me and say, hey, I love your review, or I bought this game because of you. I just do it for fun. And I view anything like that as icing on the cake. And if somebody, complains about a view I have or whatever, it's like, well, whatever, it's my view, man. I don't really care what your view is contrary to that. But if somebody has constructive criticism, like I'll certainly listen to that. Like, oh, maybe you should rethink your position here because, I'm a science person, so I'm always open to really having my views changed, and can be convinced on that. So I don't know. That's interesting. But I think, the biggest rule is just if you're going to do a podcast, if you're going to do video reviews, if you're going to do whatever, what is it about that you want to get out of it? What level do you want to do it? And can you do it at that level and still enjoy doing it? I mean, one of the reasons I don't want to professionally do board game stuff is then that becomes your job. And then all of a sudden you need a new hobby because your hobby has become your job. And I don't want that to happen. That's why I like to do it at the level I can. Because I think I heard Shut Up and Sit Down say this once, like games used to be their hobby until they started Shut Up and Sit Down. And now they had to take up like reading books and biking to relax from playing games. I mean, in a sense, it's almost why I quit playing World of Warcraft when I did back in the day. One of the reasons is I'm like, gosh, organizing adults playing a stinking video game is more work and stress than teaching middle school students. This is not where my hobby should be. And then I met my wife too, so it was a really good excuse to get out of it. Yeah, but I think that's the thing: is know what you want out of it, strive for that, be happy with that, and just kind of keep on plugging away at life, man.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting perspectives that you guys add. I think for me, it's mainly about having an outlet. When I get done with an experience, if it's positive, negative, ambivalent, I have fairly strong opinions, and I think that this is an appropriate vehicle for them.
Actually, Joe, I got to interrupt you there. You have weak opinions. They're always weak.
Okay, well, I need a vehicle for my weak opinions. So, and if I didn't have this,
Joe's Spanish class thanks us for allowing him to do a podcast, so they don't have to hear him rant at them in Spanish about board games that annoy him.
Well, for me, this is where it's at, man. Like, yeah, for me, like you mentioned that Shut Up and Sit Down is now taking up other hobbies to escape board games. For me, this is still the outlet. This is still something that is keeping me productive in the things that I don't enjoy and entertained for, and looking forward to and anticipating other things that are coming out. I think that I read something recently, and it's almost, I've always been kind of a reluctant individual to enter social media. Honestly, it's entirely board game related, and I mean, maybe that's a little bit exploitative of what I use social media for, because I didn't use Facebook at all until we started playing games around Facebook and getting people involved, and I started to really see, how Facebook could be used more as this tool than as a public portrait of yourself, which should only be, essentially to be able to, I think, validate or maybe just make you seem less creepy, maybe? I don't know, I don't know exactly. Anyway, I feel like, let's put it like this. If I meet somebody at a game night that never seen me before, I'm like, hey, yeah, join the Ames Board Game Club on Facebook. Friend me on Facebook. You'll be able to see who I am. I'm, regular person, whatever. And that way you'll feel more comfortable. So I think it's just about establishing a comfort level and a feeling of familiarity with an individual. But what's happened here is, especially in the very recent past, I feel like I've been thrust into spheres of social media that involve an awful lot of metrics. Do you guys understand what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
And I'm talking like likes and viewers and views and constantly checking that stuff and subscribers and followers. And to me, it's not something it's something that whenever I see this stuff, I immediately start comparing it to myself. And I understand that's not what I'm supposed to do. I know it because I've read articles about how people that are very obsessed with social media are not as happy. Like their happiness metric goes down because they're so busy and obsessed with comparing themselves to everybody else. So let's put it like this. I see a lot of comparisons of myself with the rest of the world. And if at any moment I let those choose what I did, I wouldn't do this anymore. Period. So it's not that I'm here telling you guys about my board game opinions. If it was, this would have ended at episode 5. This would never made it to episode 130. It's because I love what we're doing here. I do love talking with you guys. I love being able to hear from actual individuals. You're people. You're not just a thumb. You're not just a heart symbol. You're not just a follower. I know you guys. I know you guys from the chat. And if I don't know you and you're somebody who just listens to me in the car, then you're not participating in this community. And I appreciate that you're here, but I don't know anything about you. So hopefully this will be a bit of an impetus that if you really feel like you're a part of the community, you could come out and say something.
So if I have this right, Joe, what you're saying is it's all been downhill since the Space Alert episode.
Levity is something that you guys really can help me with. So otherwise, I'd go around slugging people with opinions and heavy-handed, high-browed criticism, and it would be unbearable. So, yeah.
If you go back and listen to some of our very earliest episodes, we had a very entertaining one very early on about Space Alert. It was one of the best discussions we ever had, and it was on a very early episode. So,
with that,
those archives.
Oh, that one episode to listen to, having known you guys in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and let's not forget, not only were you crapping on Space Alert, it was crapping on Terra Mystica with it.
Yeah, it was all of it. Each of us picked an overrated game, and the whole discussion was just great. It was really.
It was basically your guys' chance to just take a dump on me, and the thing was, it felt really funny. Was it did feel kind of almost like it deserved boxing bells in between each.
Oh, it really did.
Yeah, like a ding, ding, ding. Round 3.
Everybody go take deep breaths for 30 seconds and then
Yeah, I feel like I needed some like cold water splashed in my face and a towel. Oh boy. Well, gentlemen, I think that's why we do this. In a nutshell. There's a lot more to it, but that's all for now. So let's talk now about what games we are looking forward to. And I'd like to start here with Andy. What are you looking forward to, sir?
I am looking forward to next month. October. Hollenspiel is putting out a game known as 4X, which is somehow about currency trading. The main hook for me was apparently he said he took this game to people who publish 18xx games, or like 18xx company things, and they basically looked at it and said, no, this is too nerdy for 18xx players. And when Tom Russell said that, I'm like, sold, copy now, must play. I'm like,
what else did Tom Russell come up with? What'd you say?
Basically, what other games has he done?
Yes.
The one I hyped a while back, the Optimus and Populares, or whatever. He's done a lot of war game stuff, but I've read enough kind of rules and stuff and played a couple of his things. He's very big about like this critical balance point, and then once someone kind of flips over the balance point, the game's going to finish fairly quickly at that point, it seems. But no, this game just looks like nerdy markets the game. It's because like nothing is ever set in stone. Like each currency is somehow like valued by its relation to other currencies in the game. So you kind of got to buy when the currency's worth crap and somehow make it worth good amounts. But it's all highly interactive as the players buy and sell and mess with things with each other. And so I don't know. It it looks just odd. Like it's hard to get a feel for what it's going to be like. But yeah, the minute when he mentioned that people were telling him this is too nerdy for 18xx players, I'm like, okay, I will try this.
Yeah, it sounds quite interesting to me. As much as anything Andy thinks is interesting sounds interesting. I saw the board to this Rome game that you're talking about, Andy, and in its structure, it sounded eerily close to a game that's already been released called Republic of Rome, I think it was. But Republic of Rome actually had like decent components, like a rule book that wouldn't take a doctorate's degree, or not just a doctorate's degree, but just an entire week to prepare for. And
this one was like 6 pages, dude. It's not that bad.
Okay, well, I stand corrected on that. Anyway, Andy.
Yeah,
I would be quite interested to see, when you play this, whether or not I feel like it's almost become to the point where I'm not even so much a person as I am like an idea at times. Like you guys will be playing a game and I'll hear afterwards like, yeah, Joe, there were moments in this game when I thought about what you'd think of this. And usually that means is not good for me.
Yep. So, Joe, there was this moment where we rolled dice, and the guy who totally was going to win, like, rolled crap, and then like got just destroyed. And we thought, no, that will not go well for Joe. But no, this one looks just really interesting. Like, I honestly am not sure how it's going to work, or what it does, but just the idea that it doesn't seem like it's random. Like it very much seems like the players are the one that's going to cause these things to go up and down by the way they purchase things. And so it'll be really interesting to deal with those economics as well as kind of getting in the head of your opponents. That kind of thing appeals to me. And I'm sure Trent will turn it into some form of diplomacy with currencies.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure of it.
Kind of what Trent's around for, though. So Trent, anyway, now let's tell us about your game, which I think you're going to talk about a game I almost talked about but couldn't think of the name of it. Anyway, let's figure it out. Why don't you tell everybody before I say the wrong thing?
I'm going to talk about Altiplano, which is follow-up to Orleans from the same designer, Rainer Stockhausen.
It is the one I thought it was, but I unfortunately misnamed it Alpaca, and I'm glad that you took over the hyping of it because I chose something else anyway.
Okay, so it's a bag builder game, just like Orleans. You're putting items in your bag, but in this one you seem to be putting goods in your bag and then trading those goods for other more valuable goods, and then gradually trading those goods up into cards that have different powers. It seems to involve a lot of trading. And there's also the board layout. It seems to be, the rule book, it's one of those rule books. I read the rule book. It's available in English online, and I read it. But it seems to be one of those rule books that will make more sense when you have the pieces on the table. So from what I understand, a lot of it is trading goods up for more valuable goods, and then turning those better goods either into cards that provide powers for you, or continuing to get more and more and more goods that are better and better. So in that, it's kind of like, think of Dominion as a good comparison. Are you using your money to buy cards, or are you using your money to buy provinces? It's like that decision over and over and over again is the way it seems to be. I really haven't decided yet how I feel about it. It looks to me like they have done away with the biggest problem I had with Orleans, which was that it was often a race to see who could get a particular tile or two, and then they'd just be off to the races with that tile, which is one of the biggest drawbacks I had with Orleans. Everybody should probably be racing for particular player power. This one doesn't seem to really quite have that problem as much. There's the player powers they describe in the game don't seem nearly as crazy. They all seem just like they're goods exchanges for the most part. So I think this is a game that will appeal to people that really like to build a slow economic engine, rather than people that just want to get race for a particular player power and then rush to the end of the game like Orleans often feels. I'm interested to try it. I think, like I said, I think it doesn't do the thing that bothered me with Orleans because none of the player powers seem crazy to me. They all seem reasonable, like the ones that you can get. And it seems to me like you can actually play this without even really bothering with them. So I'm interested to try it. I really liked Orleans in theory, but not as much in practice. I think and I think this has the same appeal in theory, and it looks like maybe it did away with some of the elements in practice of Orleans that I didn't like. So I'm really looking forward to trying it. It's Altiplano, Altiplano. Also, the art is beautiful. The art is really nice. I like the art.
Yeah, it looks really awesome to me. And I have been quite interested in the idea of Orleans being revisited with some of those fixes. And the main issue I have, Trent, is the same as yours. Literally the exact same. Like, to me, it feels very frustrating. It feels like the game is decided when certain tiles are chosen. When I look over at what other people are doing to make their turns more efficient, I just think, well, that tile is awesome. And I'm sure that there's an awful lot more going on underneath, but it's at least something that I get hung up on, whether or not it's deserved for that. I've heard that the expansions make it better and better, but it's not something that I really felt like revisiting, and I always was just surprised at how much it raised up the ranks in BGG. I think that people are just so obsessed with the idea of deck building, bag building, pool building, whatever it means, where you can just kind of like see the impact of you making these choices of what to add to your available resources and then have a randomized distribution of those resources. I mean, to me, it's just that's something that as human beings we're just drawn to by the idea of like we're buying things and then, you know, like it touches on our own greed, and then we're you know, sitting there on the edge of our seat with drama, wondering whether or not we're going to get the things that we want and then use them to then just repeat the cycle over. So extremely excited to see the direction that this heads that will hopefully fix the same issues we both have. And I love the theme, man. I am a huge fan. I feel very disappointed that I thought it was Alpaca. That makes me sound like I'm not a Spanish teacher, like I don't actually know about this topic. I am actually quite excited and interested to see where they go with it. So very much excited, just like you. Andy, take a quick dump on it and we can move on.
Nah.
I think that's enough of a dump. We can move on now. So I am going to hype a game that I've actually got right over here. Oh, and I totally forgot. Here I have it. I have this sitting right next to me. I have S Pax Ren, for those of you who've never seen it before. Pax Renaissance, an awesome, awesome game that I just reviewed. Anyway, the game that I am hyping, for those of you that are able to watch this on YouTube, is a game I just got to play last night. And I think I'm kind of in a rhythm like this, where I will almost make my hypes are going to be, this is what I'm interested to see in the future from a game that I've only gotten a chance to see a little bit of. I will not review a game, and honestly, like, you're probably not going to see reviews of me of any game that I've only played once. In most cases, there's obviously exceptions. There's a lot of very simple games out there that I wouldn't think I needed to play more than once. But anyway, I'm hyping This War of Mine. This War of Mine is a game that was first a video game, now it's a board game. It is a book of scripts type of game. Think Tales of the Arabian Nights, think Above and Below. I had a chance to play this last night, and the big distinguishing theme of This War of Mine is it is about the atrocities of war. It is extremely dark, impossibly dark to the point that every single paragraph you see feels as though you are going to read something terrible. And I think that in This War of Mine, it has taken some very bold decisions and moves in terms of challenging what I come to expect from a learning experience in a game. I was playing this game, kind of learning it from the rule book. I'd read the rule book once a month or two ago, but it was very new to me. I'd not read it in any time recent. I couldn't remember anything's going on. And it basically instructs you to not read the rule book until you're playing the first time. And to me, it resulted in an incredibly frustrating and difficult learning experience from my perspective. A lot of the rules, the FAQ is like quote unquote included in the game, except the FAQ is almost like the real rule book. But this FAQ is hidden in the actual book of scripts, so like you can't just read it. And I couldn't even see the passages for the FAQ until afterwards. Like, I found these passages in the book of scripts, started reading them, and then I looked back at the walkthrough journal, and then I saw, like, oh, there it is. There's this passage, but it's super tiny and it's not very easy to see. So very frustrating learning experience. I almost feel like you should play a solo game of this first. My first impressions of it are, it is somewhere on that spectrum between Robinson Crusoe, which is really what is that amazing visceral experience I was hoping to get, but in a war setting, in a modern war setting, survival as a survivor here. And it's somewhere between that and Tales of the Arabian Nights. Now, Tales of the Arabian Nights is a game that, to me, drains a lot of energy from me. It makes me yawn, makes me feel like I'm ready to go to bed, like I'm being told a bedtime story. And for that, I can't really appreciate the game because I don't feel like I have much agency. My decisions don't really result in any specific, identifiable, certain outcome. So I feel like this War of Mine, to me, is fulfilling like a spot here, because having played it, I need to play it again, but it feels to me like you can build the same sort of upgrades that are possible in Robinson Crusoe, and those are very clutch and very important. But you've then got this sort of overnight phase that reminds me a bit of Above and Below, where you have these encounters. But here in this War of Mine, much, much more welcome, because the central idea of the game is definitely more, to me at least, thematic in nature than, say, Above and Below, which to me did not really do, I don't know, it felt like a vague, fairly vague and lifeless Euro with a fairly vague and lifeless storytelling element to it that just never came to full fruition. Here in this War of Mine, the board game, even in just one play, I can tell you that it rests on the laurels of an excellent writing, and I'm going to say more about it once I get more plays and can actually give it a review. So very hyped here, very excited to try this War of Mine and hopefully validate all the crap that I bought on Kickstarter, because it really did a great job of making all these different elements seem to me like they would make it a more robust storytelling experience. So had a first experience that was once again very frustrating, as previous games have been for me. It was frustrating, I feel like, because of the fault of this company, though, not because of any player necessarily. I think that their strategy is not conducive to what the board gaming, what core board gamers are going to be expecting. But it doesn't mean that it's not worth its time in the sunlight. So that's my take on this War of Mine, the board game. And there it goes. It's out of my hands. What do you guys think?
Eh.
Andy, I'm sorry, I forgot. Inviting you to crap on it then makes it okay. So yes, but Andy, crap on this, please, so we can move on.
No, I know absolutely nothing about it. So I'd play it if it was put in front of me.
I don't think that's even true. I'm going to call shenanigans on that. I'm going to call it BS.
Well, it just depends on what situation. Now, if it's put in front of me and someone says, hey, you can play this, or hey, we got a game of Arkwright going here, then I'm out of the table and playing Arkwright. But
there's like maybe 20 games out there that I feel like could be substituted for Arkwright there, and you're probably going to have most of them with you and already have plans to play them. Andy, come on, dude. No. Just admit that when you said I'll play it if it's in front of me, that sir, was not accurate.
Yeah, I would. You would played it.
All right, I'm calling you on this, man. Calling your bluff here, Andy. It's going to happen. What do you think, Trent?
I don't know. I have played.
You don't know about the game, or you don't know about Andy and that he'd play it?
I don't think Andy would enjoy this game. However, I have played it and I quite like it. I think it's definitely better than Tales of the Arabian Nights. There's no question there. Your other comparison, I see what you mean by saying it's a mix of Robinson Crusoe and Tales of the Arabian Nights. I think that when this game is at its best, it provides a more compelling experience and story than Robinson Crusoe. But whether or not the problems are more compelling, I don't really know yet. Like, the gameplay choices are more compelling. I don't really know about that. I think at its best, this game could be better than Robinson Crusoe. I think that this game can have games that go really, really well, amazingly deeply thematic, and other plays that are not so much. I think it can have a lot of... mixed experiences in various plays. That's my feeling about it. Just having played it once and like kind of half playing it again solo. That's kind of my feeling on it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep tackling the beast, and I appreciate your input there, Trent, because I can see a lot of potential overlap with currents that I may have noticed. So I'm definitely going to keep going at it, though. And I was worried that it would be a discouraging first play that I immediately knew wouldn't be for me, but that was not the case. Absolutely not. And I feel like it is one of those experiences where I am really drawn into the theme, and it's really on the backs of the writers, which to me, in my opinion, I'm not going to say. I've already thought up a few token lines that I'm excited to say, but you know what? I'm going to save them for the actual review. Well, gentlemen, it's been great. It's been great, Trent. I hope that you have been rewarded with what you came here for. I certainly have been as well. And Andy is going to be rewarded because of heavy games. Hooray!
No.
And not just heavy games, Andy, but you got a chance to take a crap on some other games that aren't heavy.
I thought for me that was a fairly low amount of crap.
And you thought correctly. I'm not going to dispute that. Absolutely not. No. But just you got to, though. You got to enjoy it. So anyway, thank you so much to everybody that's joined us here in the chat. The rest of you guys out there that are out there on the webs here listening to us, it's just awesome. I'm happy that you are taking in this this media that we are putting out there for you. It means an awful lot to me. I do see your downloads and our metrics, but like I said, if I was doing this for the metrics, I'd have quit a long time ago. And I expect an episode next week, because it really is something that I love to do and something it sounds like you guys are very much rewarded for, with or without the entire world behind us. So thank you for your support, and we hope that you have enjoyed this episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. I am your host, Trent. I'm your host, Trent Ham. I've been joined tonight by
Joe Salon.
Wait,
who are you, Andy?
I'm Andy's other personality.
I've met Andy's other personality. Actually, I prefer him to Andy just a little bit. Yeah. It's marginal. It's not very different. Sounds the same, talks the same, smells the same. Yeah. But he's okay. I like him just a little better. I like you both, just this one a little better.
Yeah.
Andy Dennison, it is great to have you here as well. And anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this week's episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, and that you will catch us next week here on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. Go out there and be outlaws or renegades or uglies or Eastwoods or whatever it is, and have a great week of gaming.